The phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while the kettle hissed. I wiped my hands on a towel and glanced at the screen. A single message that looked like a clean cut through winter air. "Christmas is better without you." It was from my father. 6 words. No ornament of condolence, no softening emoji, just a sentence that finished me. For a long minute I let it vibrate on the glass like something foreign. My chest hollowed out in a way that made me step. Back from the counter, I typed one word and hit send. Okay. That single, tiny reply was neither surrender nor calculation. It was a hinge, the sound of a door starting to open. By midday, their lawyer called. By New Year's, the world my parents had constructed around their polished lives began to crack, and what spilled out was dirtier than I had imagined. It wasn't only that they wanted me, gone from their Christmas. It was that, for 3 decades, they had been living a life that smelled more like invention than truth, and that invention had a price. My name is Amelia Cross. I am 35 and I teach literature to teenagers who can recite Keats but not their parents' bank accounts. Growing up, our home looked like something from a holiday catalog: garlands, matching stockings, my mother's precise wreath on the door. We'd pose for photos in front of the tree and send out the cards with our glossy smiles. The story I told myself was that my parents were simply careful with appearances. They were community pillars, volunteer dinners, school board donations, a father who coached Little League, and a mother who could throw the perfect fundraiser. People applauded them on the lawn, clinking glasses beneath twinkle lights. Nobody knew how tightly the ribbons were tied. When I was 10, I overheard a terse conversation between them through the bathroom door. I don't remember the sentence that cut off. I remember the silence it left. My mother slammed the door and later smoothed my hair and said, "Everything is fine." That phrase became the hinge of who I was expected to be. I moved away when I was 22 and married at 27. My husband, Ethan, left 2 months. Before the Christmas in question, our marriage frayed slowly, small silences in place of conversations, and he told me once with a bluntness that felt like a bone, "You've got walls around your heart, Amelia. They're ancient." He was right. My walls had been built brick by brick inside a house that taught me to bow and smile. So when I drove home for Christmas tentatively, because old habits are stubborn, my mother opened the door but didn't hug me. My father's eyes slid over me like a glare. My seat at the dining table had no place setting. The house smelled perfect. Roast, pine, the fake comfort of decor. Later that night, my father's message arrived. "Christmas is better without you." My first reaction was disbelief, maybe a prank, a misclick, some cruel attempt at humor. Then their lawyer called, a man with a soft voice and tidy vowels who, with the patience of a bureaucrat, explained that my parents had requested changes to estate plans and trusts. "Miss Cross," he said, "your name is being removed as a beneficiary." He paused like a surgeon, deciding what to cut. "We'll send you paperwork." I laughed at him. I told him no. I told him I didn't even know there were trust documents. He didn't laugh back. When I told my mother what had happened, because some part of me still imagined there might be an explanation, she said, "There are family matters to be handled carefully, Amelia. We'll discuss it later." Later became a wall. In the days that followed, long dormant memories began to line up like fallen tiles. There were small anomalies I'd ignored. A birth certificate request that took too long to clear when I applied for a passport. An aunt who always hesitated before saying certain things. A photo I found years ago in my mother's jewelry box of a woman cradling a baby who did not look like me. I started looking. Paperwork, addresses, phone numbers. I called an aunt who had been estranged for years. My mother's sister, Claire, who sighed like someone who had been waiting for an inevitable storm. "I thought you would find out when you were ready," she said finally. "Or I thought maybe you would never find out." She told me then what my parents had never told me. I had been adopted informally as an infant. Not through official channels, at least, not in any public record that would make sense. My biological father had. Then my mother's brother-in-law, a young man who died in an accident before I was born, and my mother, terrified of scandal, had folded the incident into a tidy fiction. I gave them a home. She had smiled in public. We saved a baby. Saved, she claimed. Yet paperwork suggested a different story. Trust documents, old deeds, letters, a notarized will hidden in a bank safety deposit box began to appear like breadcrumbs. In one creased envelope, I found a trust deed naming someone my name crucially. Someone who had a rightful claim over real estate and accounts that I had never been aware of. The deeper I reached, the murkier the truth grew. Money trails moved through shell entities, property listed in names I didn't recognize. My parents, it seemed, had been not only guardians of an image, but stewards of an estate that had benefited them for years. I was an heir in paper, but in practice I was invisible. When I found a handwritten document, my father's old will that had not been filed, properly, it was clear what they had planned. The will named me Amelia Cross as the beneficiary of certain properties and accounts. But the will had been tucked away, unfiled, while other documents were modified and signatures forged. It was as if a narrative had been written in different ink for different audiences, one version for friends, the other for ledgers. By now, the lawyer Mr. Preston, my parents' lawyer, had called twice more. Each call was gentle and frightening. "These are family matters," he said. "We'll work through them." His words were careful as a surgeon's. The effect was the same: control. I hired my own attorney, papers flew, notices were sent. The chill that had always lurked behind my parents' smile uncoiled into something that smelled like fear. Then, one late night, my mother showed up at my apartment. She was not the composed woman I'd seen celebrating at church banquets. Her lipstick was smudged, hands trembling like someone who'd been rehearsing a speech and found no words. "You don't understand," she said, voice small. "We saved you. You would have been homeless, wandering, ruined." The story she presented was a desperate, elaborate self-justification. "Saved me?" I repeated, feeling hollow at the center. "You stole my life." She cried then, not because she felt the injustice of what she'd done, but because the fiction she depended on was over. She begged. I closed the door gently in her face. The calls from Mr. Preston ceased, but new letters arrived, notes from banks, auditors, and a quiet investigator who had been asked to verify signatures. Paper trails can be stubborn in their truth. I did not seek to punish out of vengeance. I wanted the truth acknowledged and, if necessary, the restoration of what was legally and morally mine. I demanded audits. I requested the originals of any documents that affected my name. My lawyer worked like a miner, prying loose years of alteration. The hearings were small in office, a table, 2 coffees gone cold. The bank's records showed transfers. Signatures, examined side by side, revealed enough deviation to make a forger blush. Strokes wrong, dates inconsistent. The will I had found intentional or careless had been placed in the wrong file, almost as if there had been a plan to bury it. Once the investigation started, small fissures opened. A nephew of my father's accounting partner made a careless comment at a family BBQ, and within a day a phone call had been placed. Friendships I had once considered permanent rerouted themselves awkwardly towards safer ground. Their church group meetings became smaller. Invitations stopped coming. My parents' world contracted into legal counsel and urgent whispers. The community's applause turned cautious. I found it neither uplifting nor gleeful. This was not theater. It was a life being exposed, and exposure is like a blade sharp not only for those struck, but for everyone nearby. When the probate case finally moved toward a settlement, my father called me on an evening painted with the lavender of late winter. His voice was flattened. "We thought we were doing the right thing," he said. The words were dull. "We wanted to protect you." I listened. There were no arrests that night, no dramatic reveals in the press. The settlement was procedural. Some titles moved back into my name. Some accounts were frozen pending reconciliation. My lawyer insisted I remain calm. My mother's lawyer asked for mediation. The town's rumor mill did what it does. It ground. Then, unexpectedly, my mother's health failed, not dramatic, but a slow erosion of will. I do not say that with triumph. There is a human cost to any collapse of a life. The most difficult thing was the private calculus, how to hold someone accountable without wanting them to vanish. In the middle of this, a figure stepped forward who had not been there for years, my Aunt Claire. She had been quiet in the background, the one who knew the story but let the family's silence be a curtain. She gave a deposition that corroborated my findings, and her straight, plain testimony had the weight of years. It made the ledger of truth seem less like a vendetta and more like a restoration. The account of what had happened circulated quietly at first, then with louder hums. My parents, once arbiter and hostess of perfect gatherings, became a lesson. Image can be a gilded cage. It is now a year since that text on the counter. The trust documents were updated, and I regained legal recognition of assets that had belonged to my name. I donated a significant portion to a foundation that supports children in unstable placements, those who might have been me. Call it restitution, call it a lesson. I wanted my life to do some good where it had been warped. People told me revenge would be sweet. It wasn't. The end of a lie is rarely a party. Instead, it is a morning with new light, a slow settling of things that had been held under tension. My mother and I talk sometimes by phone. Our conversations are small and careful, a slow rebuilding or perhaps a slow understanding of distance. My father apologized once in a letter that read more like an inventory of regrets than a reconciliation. I moved to a smaller apartment and planted a small herb window on the sill. It felt like an act of claiming small things that belonged to me. Basil dying and returning in cycles, rosemary that survived the winter. I teach and my students give me sentences I can live in, short, furious, alive. They are my witness now. On the anniversary of that text, I went back to the house where I grew up not to fight or to gloat, but to take a photograph. The wreath still hung, perhaps a little less perfect. The lights might have been up, but the shine had a different texture. I took a picture and sent it to my Aunt Claire with a simple message, I am okay. Her reply was immediate, you always were. That single, stubborn truth is the thing that lights me now. The okay I typed the first morning after his message did not concede defeat. It was, in an odd way, the first honest word I'd given myself in decades. It became a small vow. Okay with the truth, whatever shape it took. If there is a moral knot that I think stories are obliged to teach one, perhaps it is this. People will try to label you and limit you for their comfort. Sometimes those labels are small pieces of cardstock. Sometimes they are entire myths. Your task is not to tear them down in public theater that can be tempting, but to look at where your life has been owned by other people's stories and gently insist on the facts. Often the facts are slow. They arrive like winter thaw. When I walk my students to their buses, when I have my coffee, when I plant the basil and feel it push green against January, I say the small words that matter. I am mine. And when Christmas comes now, I light a single candle on the sill, not in anger, not in triumph, but in memory of what I learned to name. The difference between a life staged for an audience and a life owned by its truth.